Welcome back to Real Talk, everybody. We are super excited to welcome our very first guest to share their raw and honest exchange story. Welcome to Real Talk, Iris. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing very well.
So tell us, why are you here? Obviously, you're an exchange student. Where are you coming from? Where did you go? How long ago?
Okay, so I'm class of 2011, so I'm ancient. I am from the Netherlands, and I did my exchange year in Gilbert, Arizona. So nice and hot.
A little bit warmer than
this
lovely
Boston
fall
today.
day in Boston.
It's okay.
How does it feel? 2011, so the class is 8 years ago.
It feels like a lifetime ago. Like so much has happened since, but it's it's weird. It's kind of one of those moments where you're like, it's forever ago, but it's also yesterday.
It's a strange time warp where like your exchange feels literally like it was yesterday, but it's been almost a decade.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we are interested in knowing more about a decade ago.
Yes.
When you decided to go on exchange, what was it in your younger self that decided, yes, I want to move to the U.S.?
So for me, it was something that just clicked when I first heard about it. I was 13. I walked into my teacher's classroom. He had a poster up saying, go live your life in the U.S. And I was like, yes, actually, that is what I want to do. And I requested a brochure, and EF sent me 20 over the span of like 2 months. And my parents kept being like, it's not going to happen. And then a few years later, when they saw it was not something that I came up with on a whim, something I really wanted to do, something I had, really researched. They're like, yeah, let's go to an information meeting and see what it's about, and signed up for the interview on the spot.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And sort of what did you tell your parents? Okay, yes, you want to go live in English and live in the U.S., but what did you tell them?
So for me, it was a big part was that it was kind of on that cusp where I was going to go to university, and I knew I wasn't really ready. I wanted to live a little bit more life before I went there. And I was like, I'm going to go from studying hard all through high school to studying hard in university, and then when am I going to do something for me?
Yeah.
And this was kind of a good sell to my parents, because it wasn't like I was saying I'm going to go backpacking for who knows how long and let's see if I ever make it back to college. And it was like, this is going to be for 10 months. I'm going to be in a school setting. It is academic. It is set on what do you want to do later on, and kind of try to figure that out. My parents really liked that idea. They were like, this is a good way to fill in the gap here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how old were you then when you came to the U.S. the first time?
So I was 18. I was an older student when I came on. I graduated back home, so it was a different type of situation, but it was still very, very new for me.
That's amazing. So then if that was 8 years ago that you were on exchange, we have something that we want to show you.
Oh, God.
We have your application, which you must have filled out 9 years ago.
Yes.
If you came 8 years ago. And I thought this was super interesting, and I wanted to ask, your major interest is baton twirling.
Yes.
Would like to do that. That is in many times in your application. You really wanted to do baton twirling. Can you
do that?
Can you explain,
so
that?
So I'm not naturally athletic, but baton twirling was something that I found when I was very young that I was good at, and it was combining, choreography with showmanship, and I just really liked performing. And so I loved being a part of my team. I loved doing that solo, and so when I was being interviewed, they asked me, okay, so what's kind of interesting about yourself? Like, what's different? And baton twirling was something that always set me apart, because nobody ever was like, yes,
they put exclamation points all around it.
Yeah, nobody was ever like, baton twirling is what I do. And so I just put that in my application a bunch of times. I was like, maybe somebody will pick up on it. And it's not like my host family had a particular interest in it. I don't even think they really cared, but my high school really liked it. So my high school didn't have a baton twirling team or anything like that. But I did color guard and winter guard, which is similar, and it has kind of the similar aspects where it's, like techniques and performing. So I loved getting to do that. So it was fun.
So you got your baton twirling continuing.
Yes. I got to continue doing that in some way, shape, or form. So that was really good.
And that's one of my favorite things with this application, actually. I'll let you look at it because I don't know the last time you looked at the printed copy.
It's been a bit. Would like to live in a warm region. They did that with Arizona, that's for sure. It's so weird to see it, especially in my own handwriting from 8 years ago, which has improved.
I think that's the case, hopefully, for everyone.
I should hope so. I feel bad that in the past they had to read these handwritten.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was really interesting in there. You talked about how your dad was on board right away, but your mom wasn't.
Yeah, no, definitely. My dad, first time I told him, he was aware that it was kind of a long-term plan, and so he was, if this is something you want to do in a few years, we can work towards that. Like, that's no problem. And my mom tossed the brochure and was like, no, you are never leaving. And then for her, it was really a big point that I kept at it for years, and that EF and the brochures also kept at it for years. That's really what got them on board, both of them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I have also another picture of you.
Oh, gosh.
This is a great picture.
Oh.
This is baby Iris in Arizona, if you can't see, with the cacti and the flowers. And this is it. This is what, the younger you fought for and wrote all these things. And
I know. Gosh, that's so interesting. So I remember this was on a trip with my parents. They came to visit, and we went from Arizona to Las Vegas and the Grand Canyon, and we went all over. And we stopped here because my sister was like, oh, there's so many cactuses. And I was like, it's cacti. And yes. And so we stopped and took pictures with that. And that was like my quintessential Arizona picture. I was like, here's the cacti and me. So
that's fantastic. I mean, I love pictures because it allows us to sort of like rewind time and to see yourself back on your exchange. But now sitting here in Boston, like at the EF headquarters,
yes.
What do you think of yourself 9 years ago before exchange? What do you think about your decision to go?
Oh, best decision I've made, hands down. It's interesting to realize now that how well I had researched it. I still had no clue what I was signing up for. I thought I knew everything, but what I knew was like what was a part of, like your signing package and like what EF would take care of. I had no clue what it would be like experience-wise. And I was happy in retrospect that was kind of a wide open space for me. So I got to not think, is this how it should be? But I got to think, is this, good for me? Is this what I wanted to get out of it? And so it was definitely, definitely different. And then having lived through that year, obviously there are lots of ups and downs, but I think overall, that's kind of the nice thing about distance. Now when I look back, it's only fond memories. And even the times when I thought it was hard, I can look back on it now and think, oh, but you learned so much. And you wouldn't have learned that if it was all good. So, hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, I think something we talk about a lot in the world of EF and high school exchange year is that by going on exchange, you get this superpower of sorts. It's when you understand you can handle anything that life throws at you. And yes, you're going to face challenges, but then now you're looking back and you're like, oh, well, I can handle any challenge that comes my way now because we survived living with cacti. Oh, such a great photo. I love this. It's great. But now, I think that some of you might be asking, why is she sitting here in Boston with us? I think that's a little confusing. 8 years ago, she was in the United States, and now she's living here full-time again. Tell us a little bit about how you found yourself back in the U.S.
So I loved my exchange year so much that I never really took a step away from it. So when I came back, I was offered the opportunity to be a returning ambassador, and I took it, both hands. Loved, spending my Saturdays with the EF staff and other ambassadors and talking to new students and talking to their parents and convincing them that this was the right way to go for them. Yeah. And I kept at that for years. So I took the step into becoming an interview leader, and then I was offered the opportunity to be a summer intern at the office. and really got to see EF from all different perspectives. And along those lines, along the way, I was also studying, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then at some point I was like, you know what, it's actually been pretty crystal clear for like the last 8 years. I want to work for EF. And so after I graduated, applied for a position here in Boston, which is actually specifically for ambassadors and for alumni students to come over for a year and work on the host family recruitment team. So I'm a part of that now, and I get to talk to amazing families every day who are on the cusp of deciding if bringing in a student is going to be what they want to do. So it's really interesting to kind of get to inform them, get to give them the student's perspective, and making sure that they're, you know, well informed before they make the biggest decision really in their life right now. So it's a really great experience to have as a former student. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think the thing about you being on this team as well, and I think some of you can probably pick it up, is people don't think you're Dutch.
Yeah.
They don't think that you're not American.
No, I definitely have to really tell them a few times. Like, oh, actually, I am Dutch. And then sometimes I get that American, you know, answer back. It's like, oh, really? We're German. It's like, no. I'm actually Dutch. I'm not, like, my heritage is not there. Like, I'm from there. And it's definitely interesting. And I think it's, you know, for a lot of host families, also kind of a reassurance. Like, oh, this student is going to be able to speak English.
Yeah.
And also just, you know, it's easier to communicate this way. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not an automatic thing, right?
No.
Like, you can ask any exchange student, and we all have moments of panic living in our second language where we mispronounce something or we use the wrong word.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you have a story. Like, do you have a language mess up story that you were like, oh my God?
Oh gosh. Not necessarily. It's just that a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't really hear it. But then when I get tired, I start slurring my words a little bit more, or like, I'll respond, and without thinking, like, I will respond in Dutch.
Yeah.
And those are definitely moments where people are like, oh, right, you totally are not American. Like, yep, it's true. I am not just, you know, just saying. So nothing major that I really messed up with, but just generally, like, when I get tired, it doesn't always stay consistent.
Even in your native language.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm in English, I'm like, what is this word again?
Yeah.
So definitely when you live full-time in a second language, it's exhausting, but it's
yeah.
also so rewarding, because I think there is a point when you no longer translate, when you just speak and you listen and you communicate, and that's super cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And probably why people think you're American, because you even have American phrasings.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think that's the benefit of living in it as a culture and not just having intense, you know, or extensive English classes, is getting to also hear, you know, like, what do teenagers say? You know, what kind of phrases come up? So I was talking actually to a host family this week, and she had been an exchange student in Germany.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, so do you still speak German? She said, well, I speak Valley Girl German because I lived there in the 80s, and I speak teenage German from the 80s.
Amazing.
So it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to new Germans anymore, but, you know, I do speak it, and I think that's such a big part of it. It's not just knowing the words, not just knowing the grammar. It's being able to speak it in the same flow, having the same intonation, and then also just having a few of those slang words in there. It really helps make you sound more native. So
More American.
And
then you start dressing like them. And
oh,
then
gosh.
You start... Sensitive subject.
No, it's more like when I remember arriving in the U.S. and everyone's like, you look so European. And I was like, what does that mean?
You only wear black.
That's true still. But, yeah, no, that things like that where they're like, you look so European. And I was like, is that an insult? Is that a compliment? I don't know.
And then if you were an exchange student right now, you'd be going home wearing your Nike slides and your ankle socks like everybody else.
Yes.
I think that's one of the coolest things, is watching this transformation of how you arrive at your host family to what you wear when you go home. It's
exactly.
Like super American.
Whole different wardrobe for sure.
For years, and we
yes.
do. But if you could summarize, if you could put it into just sort of like one takeaway of why exchange, knowing why you decided when you were 18 and knowing what you know now. Why exchange?
In short?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like what's your elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch. If I'm going to say it purely from my perspective, I would say exchange is the reason I am who I am today. It shapes me every step I take, and it gives me the confidence every step I take and every decision I make to tell myself, yes, you can do this, you have done this, and you will always be able to do this. But also, if it doesn't work out, it's never the end of the world. There's always a next step. And I think that's the biggest part, is that in my exchange year, you know, like I was a move student, and I know that that's a very complicated situation to be in, but it ended up to me living with a family that I now consider absolutely my family, and that I visit as much as I can, and that I talk to every day. And I would have never met them if it hadn't been for, you know, the first situation that I was in. And so I think it's also seeing that the hard times and the mistakes that you make, they absolutely lead to better things as long as you're willing to work through them.
That is perfect. So well said. And I think everything that you just said is what brought you here. And here you are 8 years later sitting in Boston. And we are so thankful that you shared your story with us. And I know a lot of people probably have questions for you, and so you can check below for the information on how to get in touch with Iris. Again, she's here in Boston, so on the time zone if you happen to be in the U.S. But thank you again for joining us and sharing your story, and I'm sure we'll have you again later.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Amazing.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.